How to deploy to AWS EC2 using Digital.ai deploy and Terraform. So I'm going to go over how you can actually, as sort of a how-to of how you can actually deploy to AWS EC2 instances with Digital.ai deploy and Terraform. So in order to do this, what we're going to need is going to need access to the internet. You need Docker or Docker desktop, Docker Compose, and an AWS account. So how's this going to work? So what we're going to do is we have a repo we're going to check out from our community repo site that has all the files that you're going to need to do this. And in those files, you're going to have to set up a couple things. So first, we're going to need you to take your key that you got from AWS, public keys, a PIM file, and put that in there. I'll show you where. And then there's the secrets.xl vals that we're going to have you create a token in AWS for, and then you put that in the secrets XL vals file. And then there's some other values that you might want to change based on your location and what availability zone you want to test this out in. And then you can run the start demo script, and then we'll have you, which will start an instance of Digital.ai deploy as a Docker container using Docker desktop or Docker on your local machine. And then we'll run the build script, which will actually package up all the Terraform stuff and put it into a provisioning package in Digital.ai deploy. And then we can go into Digital.ai deploy and provision that into AWS. Now, it's important to note that we could actually do that with the CLI we're using and not even go into Digital.ai deploy, but it actually looks a lot better and more fun to do it this way. And then after we do that, we can actually run another build script. We have some example applications like the pet portal application, and we can then turn around and deploy that into the servers we provisioned in AWS. And of course, we can test that out and so forth, and we'll test the connections along the way. And so it'll give you a lot of opportunities to see how you can do these sorts of things with Digital.ai deploy. Okay, so let's kind of go into the demo on how we do this. So first, I want to point out we have this community repo. It's ZB Labs community how-to, and you'll notice that we have right now we have this Terraform thing in here. We'll probably be adding more later, and then there's some demo apps that we're going to have kind of once you provision something or you create some infrastructure, it'd be nice to be able to deploy something to it, see how it works. So we can use Digital.ai deploy for both of these sort of things, and we'll actually see that in this how-to. All right, so let me go over here to the editor here, and we will kind of look at what's going to happen here. Well, actually, let's go ahead and start the demo first. So we do start demo, and that'll download some stuff and start up the XL deploy server. And if we go over here in the editor, what we're going to do, I'll kind of go over what we're going to create here. So in the first part, we're going to create this pet portal host project, right? And so there's several pieces. There's a server piece, which is going to be the application, and it's going to have in it some templates for some directories and some our web server and an app server and some over there hosts for that, and a MySQL client so we can connect to the database here. Now you'll notice in here there's a few that we've actually used the dictionary tags. That's a standard sort of thing in Digital.ai deploy that allows you to specify some variables that you're going to use in an environment and associate those dictionaries with an environment so when you deploy things. We also have this type of variable here, and these variables are actually variables that come from the output of Terraform. So these are going to be Terraform output variables that we get suck in and use as dictionary values during the provisioning of the servers. So other than that, there's a couple other things we need to do. So here in the directory structure, there's a SSH key, and in here there's a SSH key PEM file that we're going to want to have. And so that SSH key PEM file, we'll look at the MD of that. This is just going to be like basically your certificate that you download from AWS. And then also we have a secrets file that's here, and that secrets file, the kind of a MD version of that is basically it's going to have the AWS access key and AWS secret key, and you get those from your AWS IAM account on AWS. I can actually show you where you can get that. So let's actually go over here to AWS, and we'll create a new tab here. So IAM, open new tab. and I have a number of users that we have here, but basically what I can do is go in here, and I can create security group, create an access key. And when you do this, it only shows you this access key the one time when you create it. So if you lose the second half of this, the secret part of it, then you have to, inactivate this key and make a new one. All right, so let's go back to our code. Okay, so then the last piece is the just some value. So like I wanted to prefix my project with DAD, Digital.ai deploy, and then that will actually show, we're going to use that as tags and so forth, so we can find things in the environment later as well. And then the name of my SSH key that I have in here, so mine is rbroker-us1, and the AMI that I'm using here is basically an Amazon Linux 2 version in the EC2 US East 2 region, and I'm going to use a T2 micro, so because this will be eligible for free tier. And then other than that, the rest of this is just sort of what one would expect out of a Terraform script, right? Once again, I'm using Digital.ai deploy dictionary values for things like the AWS region and the access key and stuff like that. So what I can do then is I'm actually leveraging some of the things that I have in deploy to extract secrets and so forth and do substitutions into things. And then I have a series of submodules to create or things. You're creating a security group, a web server, an app server. And, security group is kind of what you'd expect. You have an ingress control, ingress rules and egress rules. And of course, I have some outputs here for the security group, which then I can use in other modules like the web server and the app server. Web server, once again, just we're creating a EC2 instance, and we've got some startup stuff, and of course we have some output variables that we can leverage. The app server is a little bit more complicated because I'm installing JBoss and so forth on there. And then the final piece is we're going to create an RDS instance in AWS as well. So once I create all these this file, I actually have a build script, and I'm not going to go through the details of the build script, but basically, it just packages all this stuff up and uses the XL CLI to add these things all to the deploy server. And then the last step in this, for those of you interested, is it actually goes ahead and does an initial deploy of the SSH keys to the deploy server, so I can use those SSH keys to copy files to the AWS instances when I create them. So with that, I should actually have a my deploy instance should be up and running. And there we go. We have our pet portal host thing, and we have an environment that I created, and we have some infrastructure. So now what we want to do is we want to provision this package, and so we're going to deploy version 1 of our servers to AWS. And so we'll do this, bring these two together, and then XL deploy will figure out how they match up. It'll actually make a deployment plan for us. And so then this is our deployment plan. And so we can go ahead and execute this. So it'll take a little time to execute this, but basically what we're doing is we're using the Terraform stuff to go and apply all this stuff into AWS. And of course, as is usually the case with Digital.ai deploy, it'll copy all the output from these things into this text area below, so we can kind of play along at home, watch what's going on during the deployment process. Okay, so when the deployment actually finishes, we actually have a lot of output variables here. And these things are all the variables that we could use elsewhere in our deployment thing, but they also become things that we put into the dictionary then when we created the new environment. So if we look over here to the right, we can see that our app server and our JBoss thing and our web server all created an infrastructure, and we have a new environment. So let's actually edit this new environment, because what we need to do is we need to add our infrastructure into the environment that we just created here. So we'll add the JBoss server, we'll add the MySQL DB, and we'll add the Apache server. There we go. And now we actually have something we could deploy to, but we should also, let's just check and make sure that we can actually connect to things. So we can check the connection on the app server. So we'll run a connection here. And of course, this does what normally happens in Deploy. It logs into the remote machine to see if we can connect to it and copy files to it, and execute commands there. And so that all seems to work. And we should be able to do that with our web server as well. So let's check the connection there. And sure enough, we can connect there as well. So we're all good. So we have now provisioned some infrastructure in AWS, and we've added it to an environment. So now we can actually deploy applications there. So let's go look at our application that we would deploy here. So we have this pet portal YAML file. And so essentially what we're going to bring in here is we have like a deployment thing, which is going to have the JBoss data source, and we have our ear file that we created, and some web pages that we've added here, and some SQL scripts. So just standard sort of kind of pet portal stuff here. So we'll go back to our command line prompt, and we will change to this other directory. And we're looking here, and then so we actually have a build.sh here. So we'll actually execute that guy, and that bundles up all those things and makes our application. We notice that we have a data source for JBoss, an ear file, web content, vet clinic, and some SQL commands. Now, if we go back to our web or our application or Digital.ai deploy here, we see that our application is actually set up here in deploy. So we can actually now deploy stuff to it. So let's do that. So now we can go in here and we can just drag version 1 of our application here. We can take it to our test environment that we created that's now all in AWS. If we preview the steps, we'll see that we have, just sort of what you'd expect. We're going to create a proxy passing, run a couple SQL scripts, and then we got the rest of it here. So let's go ahead and deploy this. And of course, just like always, we can track the progress of our deployment using the dialog box here. As it goes through this, it'll show us the output of all that. And then when we have this deployed, one would expect that our pet portal application will be up in AWS, and we can go and look at it. So we'll do that as soon as we finish our deployment here. A little bit of time left, 10 seconds. Okay, so this is all done. So now if we look at our web server, this was the address for our web server. If I open up a browser here, and I can just go to, there it is, just like we expected, that AWS pet portal. And so I can actually look at all the veterinarians and so forth. So it's all there just like we thought. Now, once I've done this, I could actually undeploy these things. So in Digital.ai deploy, of course, you can deploy and undeploy things. You can upgrade things between versions, and deploy will figure out all the steps that need to happen to make that state change happen for you. And so we'll undeploy this. We'll remove that infrastructure from that test environment, and we'll deprovision the servers in AWS. And you kind of want to do this because even though you are in free tier with these things, they'll eventually start charging you for it. But even as a business, the idea of being able to spin up an environment, run some testing on it, and then tear it down is a pretty powerful thing as well. So we'll get rid of these guys here, and then we can go to this environment, and we will undeploy this guy. By the way, I should actually show you that these guys were still here. Yeah, so they're deployed here, and then when we finish doing the deprovisioning of these servers, they will actually be gone. We'll take a look at that. Okay, so once we've finished deprovisioning, we can see that all the tasks are done here. We see everything is destroyed. Let's go over to AWS and make sure that everything's gone there. So we had our servers here. They're gone now. We had their database server, and it's gone now. So everything has been deprovisioned, and you notice our package is gone from here on the deploy server. All right, so that is how you can provision and also deprovision infrastructure in AWS EC2, as well as deploy things there too. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Digital.ai Deploy. We'd be glad to help you with it.